teacher that I know say, Aikido is not a Japanese martial art. It's a martial art from Japan. Did your teacher connect Aikido practice to Japanese culture, or think it expressed anything that was essentially Japanese? Or did they think the country of origin wasn't relevant to daily practice, and you were just there to practice?
I don't think he would say that it wasn't relevant. I think Chiba Sensei was probably between two worlds. The one interesting fact that I know, Shibata Sensei, when he moved to this country, eventually he became a United States citizen after many years. Chiba Sensei never became United States citizen. He felt very important about remaining. At the same time, when I went back with him, I think he felt like this is not my country any longer. It's radically different than how I remembered it and how I grew up. I think, for example, you could say the importance of seiza and the importance of suwari-waza techniques is from Japan. That there's no reason in America, like we haven't really sat seiza. So that is an important cultural thing, I think, that actually that many Americans have gotten rid of. Like you can see many American Aikido people, they don't do any suwari-waza. And actually, in fact, if you go to Hungry Dojo, which I'm sure you know, they don't do as much suwari-waza as they probably used to. I was there and don't see many teachers doing it as much. But I think that there are certain cultural things that are important. The elements of the Japanese culture, like preserving the suwari-waza for the hips and this lower body and emphasizing the lower body, which is why things like misogi are important, or seated Iaido forms are important, or zazen is important because it really emphasizes. So Chiba Sensei once said, and not necessarily talking about Japan, but he said the Eastern idea of strength is this triangle, and the American or Western is an inverted triangle. And so I think that kind of concept, which I wouldn't limit it to Japan, because I've been to Iran and in the Middle East, people are sitting still on the floor. People are able to squat that are 80 years old. If you take an 80-year-old in America, it's very hard that they're going to be squatting. So I think that element he would probably have agreed with and said that there are elements. I think, ideally he was thinking what's the best from the East, what's the best from the West. There's a kind of freedom in the West, kind of a relaxedness, but there's a tightness and a discipline and a lower bodiness in the East, how to kind of put them together.
Tell us a little bit about your teacher's background outside the dojo, and did this influence their personal practice or teaching? What did he do outside of the dojo? Did he have a separate job or not? Did he have any other background other than Budo, and did that influence his teaching or way of thought?
Now, I can't remember his ranking, but I think he's a Sandan in Judo, and I know he studied Karate too, and of course Iaido and so forth, but he didn't do anything other than teach Aikido since he was Uchideshi in Humbu Dojo. I think that's it. He went to London. I think he had a very difficult time trying to make a living during Aikido there, and then he went back to Japan, and then from Japan he went, Yamada Sensei invited him to the United States, and then he settled in San Diego. But all that time he was just focused on Aikido. So really off the mat, to me, training with him was just as important as being on the mat. The things that I used to do with him off the mat were not much, but was probably fishing. He liked to fish quite a lot, and he would compare it to sword work and to really kind of studying nature. I don't really think that he thought about anything else other than Aikido and sword work and zazen and maybe fishing. I don't know. I wasn't there with his family a lot, but in my time being with him and traveling with him, to be honest, was a very traditional relationship. We rarely spoke. I would take care of him, and sometimes he would cook, sometimes I would try to help him, but most of it was done without words. So yeah, it was a traditional kind of strict relationship, at least with me. I don't know the other.
Can you talk a little bit more about fishing? Any stories or anecdotes that you have from doing that, and how he connected it to Budo training?
Yeah, for me, so first of all, I didn't grow up fishing. My father didn't teach me. Sensei taught me how to fish, which was it was probably more stressful than doing Aikido with him, because you know, you have this image of people when they fish, they go out on party boats and they drink and they're like just, it's not a big deal. For Sensei, it was really like a preparation. The first time he took me fishing, he made me cast in the water in Cape Cod for 3 hours with just a weight. I didn't even have any bait. I was just casting the fishing line for 3 hours. Of course, I was not catching anything. And every time the mechanism, you know, the reel would get totally unwound, he was, you know, yelling at me. He's like, you don't understand anything. He'd come over, he would fix it. He would go back. And even, you know, then Sensei would be sitting on the cooler. He'd be smoking, his back very straight, looking at the sea. We wouldn't be talking. There was no beer drinking. It was like, you know, so anyways, I sort of learned, I'm still not a very good fisherman, but it was expected then, like that was kind of my lesson. Then after that, he showed me how to tie like a bait and so forth. Then after that, when he would come, I would have to figure out where the fishing spot was. I mean, I like knew zero. I would have to go to the bait shop. I would have to ask them. I would have to ask them where the fish are, where's the best place, what's the temperature, all that. And it was super stressful. Like I would rather have gotten thrown around in a Ryugan for an hour. And then I would try to remember everything and to take this and to get the, you know, and then he taught me how to gut the fish, how to scale the fish, how to, everything. But it wasn't at all like a celebration until it was like all over and the fish was on the plate. And then you would have a beer or something. So it was, I don't know, we went on boats together. His old student, who has a student who's now my student, but his old student from London, she had a house in Cape Cod, and so we used to go to her house and fish there for a week. So sometimes he would do a seminar, like for example here in the dojo, there'd be a week in between fishing, and then another seminar like in Montreal. So I was with him for like 12 days at a time or something like that, and it was very stressful. And by the end, I was just broken. But so anyways, the fishing was, that's how I learned how to fish, he taught me.
So did Sensei smoke and drink regularly?
Yes, definitely, yeah. He smoked probably, I would say a pack a day, maybe, or maybe.
You remember what he smoked?
He smoked everything. He smoked Camel Lights, he smoked Marlboro Reds, he smoked Pall Malls, he smoked Dunhill Lights, he smoked American Spirits. I mean, I know because I used to buy them all.
This is whatever was available, or he just switched?
I think he would switch. He would get on something for a while, you know. I used to try to bring him Dunhill Lights because I thought there were a little less chemicals in them, but he didn't care after a while. He'd smoke, go back to Camel Lights.
And did he drank alcohol?
He drank alcohol.
Was he a heavy drinker or not that heavy?
I would say toward the end of his life, he became a lot less, you know, but I would say way back when he was living in the dojo, yeah, it was significant, you know, beer and wine and whiskey he would drink.
I would assume he drinks whiskey if he's...
Sake, everything. Yeah, we used to drink everything.
When since it passed away, was it because of smoking?
He had a bladder cancer, a bladder tumor, so I do believe it was probably from the lung.
Related.
But I mean, he passed away, let's see, he's the same age as my mom, so 4 years ago. He was like 75, okay. And he was smoking since he was 5 years old. He would find butts and so I mean, I don't know. 7 years of smoking. I mean, it's a pretty good life, I guess.
Yeah. Was Chiba Sensei particularly concerned with etiquette as it relates to the Bugei? Discuss, if you can, the most important parts of etiquette as transmitted by your teacher.
I think what Sensei was really after was like the Zen spirit, which is like, you know, Ichigo Ichie, there's one moment, one encounter, and how in that moment, in that one encounter to be. Exactly. So he wanted things done properly, but he didn't want things done mechanically. He would say that all the time, like you're moving mechanically, or you're like, for example, he would yell at me if there was no wine in his glass. But then if I was trying to pour it too early, he's like, stop rushing me. So it was this constant thing of like, what is the right etiquette or the right kind of action at that moment? Not just because like you're supposed to fill all the wine glasses at the table. So yes, I do think there was a form, and like when people would come in and they didn't know anything, he was really interested in them learning but this kind of like automatic behavior he was really against, and he would definitely throw these kind of bombs in people's lives to like shake them up.
Did you ever make mistakes in etiquette, and were you corrected, and how did he correct you?
I didn't really, for myself, I was raised like with a father who was in the war, in World War II, like an older father. So I had this like really great sense of kind of etiquette, how to be, and I was around the older people. So I didn't really have a problem with that with Sensei. In fact, probably I was maybe even too much. So I think he used to like to try to shake me up because I was like, you know, but he would mess with me all the time about stuff like that. You know, like one time we were cooking in the kitchen and he screamed at me. He's like, he goes, look at my hand, what's the matter with it? And I was like, what? And he's like, where's my beer? You know, so he would constantly, there's no beer in my hand. But so I think he wanted from his students a kind of like, he wanted to kind of form a kind of etiquette, but he wanted a kind of freedom too. And he liked, Sensei liked kind of these, I have to say, these people, there were some crazy people that were around them. Like they kind of didn't make sense, like etiquette wise or what they were doing, but he liked them because they were kind of crazy and rough, you know? I would say most of the mistakes I made were not etiquette. They were mostly like in techniques. They were mostly on the mat, just because I would say I'm the kind of person that probably errs way to the other side on etiquette and being really kind of planning ahead. Like for example, whenever I taught a seminar anywhere in later years, I would write him a report. I would mail it to him, I'd write him a letter, he would always write back. Other people never did that or they forgot, he got really angry. That's the way I was kind of raised. But I would say technically I made many mistakes and you know, I got punched in the face or I got screamed at or you know, that kind of stuff. So etiquette wise, I would say probably was the least of my problems with Sensei, you know. So I did make, I'm thinking of an etiquette mistake I did make one time. One time there was a teacher that was teaching at summer camp that I didn't really care for. And my friend and I, who were both disciples of Sensei, kind of really close students, like we didn't go to his class on purpose. We went to go visit Murashiga Sensei, who was sick at the time. And Sensei found out about it because it wasn't just me and this other friend of mine that ditched this person's class, it was like 8 of us. And they were all the close students of Sensei, so it looked really bad. So we, you know, Sensei called for us, of course. We went in his room, and he was sitting in a chair. There's nowhere for us to sit, so we were sitting in Seiza on the floor, and he was just screaming, really angry, and saying, this isn't the correct way to handle the situation. You should have been there for this class. You know, it sends the wrong message, and so forth like that. So that is you know, he was concerned with how you treat guests, how you treat other people too in a certain way, how to see the situation correctly. He was constantly saying that, like you have to have the right eyes to see. You have, especially when people are testing, but also when people are coming to the dojo or for example, this person's like an older person training on the mat. How do you handle that person? You know, crush them like you would a 20-year-old, you know, this kind of thing. He would get angry about stuff if that was kind of overlooked.
Did you ever witness your teacher becoming angry? What triggered this anger? And were there certain things that were known to anger your teacher? And why do you think that this was the case?
I saw him angry many times, many times. What triggered it, I think he really wanted people to get it. And when they weren't getting it, like he could get really angry about it. At the same time, it was really interesting, and I only saw this once, was that somebody did something on the mat. He was really angry, he was yelling at them, you know? And then he walked by me and he winked at me. And then he walked off the mat. So it was kind of like, it wasn't really anger. He had put it on to kind of shake this person up. Sometimes I think he did use it. Sometimes I think he used this kind of explosiveness to shake people up.
As a tool.
And then sometimes I think he was really angry. He was really exasperated at people's kind of inability to kind of grasp what was for him simple or what was an obvious thing.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
You know, for myself, I would just say that every one of his students had their own experience with sensei. To me, it's not about the number of months or times you take ukemi, even though I was kind of sensei's always been in my life, you know, as long as I can remember it, whether directly or indirectly. But these encounters that I had with him, most of it was in silence. It was always in silence. But it wasn't like in silence, like a comfortable silence like you might have with your wife. It was like a wall of fire. That's the best way. Like I'm sitting in front of a wall of fire that I really can't bear, and yet I have to be there. There's a Zen koan that's, you know, there's a man and he's hanging by his mouth from a branch. And below him are like 3 hungry tigers, and then some rascal comes and asks him a question, you know, about the Dharma. So, you know, why did Bodhidharma come from the West or whatever he asks. And anyways, in the koan says you have to answer the man correctly. But if you answer, you're going to get eaten alive by these tigers. What do you do? But that kind of thing, that kind of feeling was like being around sensei. Like there was a kind of demand from him all the time, being around him. For me, I don't know what it was like with other students, because sometimes I watched him with other students and he was very relaxed with them and they were very relaxed with him, but that was not my experience. My experience was there was always this tension, and I was always trying to kind of be relaxed under that tension, which was very difficult, and at the same time kind of figure out what he wanted and what he didn't want within all this silence. So it was quite often overwhelming and just exhausting being around somebody like that didn't give you an opening. And sometimes I wanted to ask him a question, sometimes I wanted to say something. Most of the time I didn't, but then it's like there was no opening for it. He was just like, no. So it was that in itself was a teaching, you know, how to be relaxed under pressure. That was another thing that he was really interested in. It's one thing to be relaxed when you're sitting on the beach, you have a margarita in your hand, the waves are nice, but when there's a real kind of force in your life, a real kind of problem, can you deal with it, or can you be with it in a way that's not like neurotic? And so that was like being with him, you know, it's impossible, but you have to do it. Right?
If there was one thing that you think that your teacher was trying to transmit to you, what was it?
I don't know if I can say it exactly correctly, but I would say it relates to what I was touching upon earlier, that there is a kind of freedom that is possible in every moment, and it's not based on kind of this automatic conditioning, which would be characterized by Ri, right, in Aikido, in kind of going beyond the form or spontaneously manifesting the correct form in the situation, whether you're at dinner or whether you're on the mat. I think Sensei was really, that's what he was pointing to. And that's why he was so interested in Zen, because Zen is, well, points directly to that. That is the point of Zen, and how to have that in movement. And really that's what I think he thought Aikido was, in movement, that expression of isness, or to use the Dogen's term, as it isness in that moment, just seeing what is in that moment, and if there's something that's called for, to offer that, nothing more and nothing less, right? And in his taking ukemi for him, that's kind of what he wanted. You're not collapsing under the weight of the technique, but you're not resisting. It's that kind of perfect balance between, as you know, like not giving enough and giving yourself just like an idiot. So how to have that thing, and then to have that occur without any kind of intellectuality, any kind of thought, but it manifests spontaneously. I think that's what he was trying to transmit. It's kind of a long way of saying it, but